Hey, good evening, and welcome to the June 8th Morgan and Planning Zoning Commission meeting. I'd like to welcome you here tonight. Before we begin, I also would like to welcome a new member to our commission. It's having him back as Mark Scholler. We're glad to have you back on our commission, Mark.
Glad to be back.
Okay, moving forward with old business, we'd like to review and approve our May 11th minutes. You should have seen, received a copy of those. Are there any suggested changes, revisions, modifications? Hearing none, I'll move those are approved. Philip, if you'll review any city council action we've had since our last meeting in May.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, as City Council met on June the 5th, which was Monday night, and reviewed the two rezoning applications that we dealt with last month, the first being Cosby Road, and they voted to approve that rezoning from EID into MID. And then they also met concerning the rezoning of the property on North Green Street, the Crescent property, and voted to rezone the remaining portion of that from LID into HID. So those two were approved. They also took action to reappoint Rick Lingerfelt and Don Smith to the commission, and then also, as the chairman stated, to appoint Mark Scholar to 3-year terms. Just to remind everybody, we are looking for ETJ members, and so if you are interested in serving on the Planning Commission, or Planning and Zoning Commission rather, and you live in the ETJ, if you will contact Jackie Kane at our office, she will be able to help you, assist you to get the right information to the county to be heard for that appointment.
Bill, could you define the ETJ for people that might be in
ETJ is, yes, sir. ETJ is generally an area, although not in all areas, but generally it is an area that extends 1 mile out from our municipal boundaries. There was some action some time ago, I understand, that pulled some of that back, but if you have a question as to whether or not you're in, you can call our office and we will certainly help you to figure that out.
Any other questions for Philip? The only other comment I have would like to ask, was there any discussion during the Crescent Resource rezoning request? We addressed that property up on the slope next to, what's the name of the street?
Brandstrom.
Brandstrom. Did that come up at all?
There really wasn't anyone there that spoke from that area. We had a group from the Historic Burke Foundation that spoke relative to the development or to the rezoning, and they had a qualitative or qualified recommendation or recommendation to approve, and that was that they wanted to see design that was sensitive to the area, but that also incorporated the bicycle pedestrian path across from Freedom Park over into all the way extending to the McDowell House. So just that any development would be sensitive to that area, and that it would incorporate that bicycle path.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is appearances, and this is an opportunity for anyone in the audience that is not planned to speak on our agenda tonight. We have 2 new items on the new agenda. If you have a planning issue or comment that you would like to address to the commission, now's the time to do it. Okay, hearing none, we will now open up the public portion here for new business, which is item 1, consideration of a proposal by Rutherford Electric Membership Corp. For an alternative design approval related to the proposed development of a new office facility and site. Philip, would you give us a staff review of this proposal?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, we received a request from Rutherford Electric Membership Corporation, and I'll just give you a little bit of background about that request, and that is that the Electric Membership Corporation has been, as most of you know, in its current position since the 1950s. And it is expanding its Morganton facility to better serve its customers. Part of this expansion, and you'll see in a moment what all that would include, but part of that is an expansion of their yard, their work area, where their warehouse is located, where all of their trucks They store their trucks and their equipment and whatnot. And they have a need both from a practical standpoint and from a funding. Their loan provider is requiring that they have protection of that equipment, and that protection needs to be a certain type of chain link fence with a barbed wire on top of it. And in part of that chain link fence, the minimum for their security is that it has to be 8 feet tall with the barbed wire on top. Well, within our HID zoning district, and if you look in your packet under table 4.17, there's two sections of our code that address this, and in the LID, MID, HID, CBD, and SID districts, we allow fences, we allow them in the front yard to be no taller than 5 feet. And then in the side and rear yard, they can be 8 feet, but they have to be, and there's the list of approved materials. The issue then becomes on the side and the rear yard is that they have a need for barbed wire. We have a section of code that states that barbed wire on top of chain link fences is permitted for rear yard fences not visible from a street in the EID district only. And so that is the issue. Well, as you guys are aware, that we had a similar, albeit different circumstances, but a similar case with Mountain View Elementary School where there were some design criteria. It's a unique situation. They had a creative design where we allow in our code the alternative design method. So we worked with the Electric Membership Corporation to submit a alternative design that accomplishes their goal, and the code states, and I can read that for you if I need to, but the code states under the alternative design that you have a design that is unique, or there are unique circumstances that require a different type of design than what's specifically stated in the code, but it has to meet the intent of the code. So we worked with the representatives from the Electric Membership Corporation, and they have proposed what you see in front of you, which is their landscape plan. And essentially what it would do would screen the fence from the view of the street. And so the intent being that we don't allow a fence in that area, so you essentially or effectively can't see that fence when you drive up and down the road. That would be the effect of the landscaping. Now you see in here we go. In this area, we have had discussions. This is an old landscape plan. I think they have since amended that. There are some sections that are not showing any kind of screening, and I think they've amended that to add that, and they can speak to that later in the meeting. But this is the yard area where they need to protect their trucks, tools, equipment, supplies to carry out their work. And then they would be constructing where the you have to forgive my ignorance here, but is it the Boxwood? Is that the hotel? Is that correct?
Yep.
They have purchased that and are going to demolish that structure and then construct a new office building with new access and circulation, new employee parking, and again to better assist their customers. And so again, we have worked with their representatives, and that is the essence of their request. Now, what they don't have on here that I can see any specific plant material selected, but what they have referenced is the sections of our code where we require a certain number of small trees, large trees, and then we have a pre-selected list of plants in our code that fits each of those categories, and they would work with us or our landscape architect to choose the correct material to be able to effectively screen that fence. And then the other suggestion that we had, and they can speak to this as well, but would be to, depending on the landscape material that they use, would possibly be to use a a vinyl coated fence as opposed to a regular chain link fence, because then you can kind of see through the fence instead of seeing the fence itself. Again, the intent of the code would be met, I think, because you have an effective screen and you don't necessarily see the fence itself.
Okay. Any questions for Philip? Judy?
Philip, is this screening planting material in addition to what would already be required under a landscaping plan?
They would, okay, so this would qualify along those sections that it is applied, would work to qualify for their street yard requirements, and they also have on here what it looks to me like is their plan for what they would for their building yard, which affects the new building. So any development that they have in this area, I'll get this to work. Okay. So any development they have in this area would also be subject to our requirements in the HID, which includes a street yard, a building yard, possibly even building design requirements. But over in this area, where in anywhere where the fence comes into play, then that screening would take care of that.
Okay.
That requirement through the alternative design.
Okay, so they're going to screen, let me just make sure I understand this, that there are certain landscape requirements, period, that are going to be applied. But in addition to that, there is going to be this screening material that will be high enough at maturity to screen the chain link fence with the barbed wire top. And I'm seeing trees along the road front on that fence, but what about on the sides?
That's the area, and this is the area that that you're referring to?
Yeah.
That is the area that we have spoken with them. I think there is a revised site plan that indicates
That they're going to go ahead and screen that
indicates they're going to
too?
screen that as well as
Okay.
this area.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's an area right here at the end of this parking lot,
Okay.
I think, that needs to be. And then these areas up here would then work to satisfy the buffer requirements that we have from when they expand. They have a more intense use going to a buffering against a less intense use, and that would be I would have to look. I think that's either a type 1 or type 2 buffer that they would have to meet those requirements.
In their design description, they indicated consolidating 7 driveways down to 3, and on this, I only see 2. Is there something I'm missing?
I think there is and I think the representatives from the membership corporation are here, but I think over in this area there is an access to an existing home. If that's
Oh, and that home or structural.
would maintain its access. Yes.
I got you. Any other questions or comments to Philip? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to open this up for public comment and discussion. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and address the commission, please give us your name, address, and where
My name is Judson Wortman. I'm a staff engineer with Rutherford Electric. I've been working with Mr. Luckadoo and Mr. Cochran to propose this alternative design. Mr. Luckadoo's done a very good job of explaining to you what we plan to do. We have been amending our landscaping plan based on comments from your staff. And moving forward, we'd like to have our landscape architect, Fred Blackley, located in Shelby, to work with your landscape architect to develop, to choose a species that would be readily available, affordable, that would transfer easily, and that would screen the fence very well.
can I ask a question? The rural utility services, what is their function in this? I know that it seems that they're the driving force behind.
They are our lending agency. That's who we borrow money, our funds from for all of our projects. And they require that we secure our equipment and material yard.
And we're talking here fencing and modifying that. I never saw anything in the discussion dealing with video monitoring. Is that part of the security package that they recommend too?
We do have some video monitoring. We apply it, and We don't use it when it's not needed. We do use it when it's needed. We've never needed it at our office facilities.
And since you've been there, I think the history is there's never been one recording of a theft or,
We have had thefts in the past prior to installing the heavy-duty fence that we have now, but we haven't had any theft in that location in about 12 years.
okay. Are there any other questions for comments? Thank you, sir. Appreciate your being here. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission? Okay. Seeing no one, we'll close it to public and bring it back to the commission, and I would look for a staff, or not staff, but a commission recommendation or motion, please.
I would move that we recommend, accept the recommendation of the staff on modifications as discussed.
I'd second that.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, questions, or comments? Hearing none, I ask for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion carries. That will go before the city council in June 19th at their next council meeting, and that's to be at 6:15. Thank you. Item 2 on our agenda tonight is consideration of a zoning ordinance text amendment. That's to section 4.2.4, table 4.4 of the Morganton zoning ordinance. And this amendment is related to a maximum height limit which we have within the exclusive industrial district. Philip, would you walk us through that, please?
Yes, sir. So the current height limit within the exclusive industrial district is 65 feet. And in some cases that I think could present a problem. It was brought to us on a specific case. As we review instances where we would amend the zoning code, we don't look at specific instances because they apply citywide and throughout the ETJ. So we only consider those that would need to be affected throughout the city or in every EID zoning district in this case. And so we felt like that may hinder a potential manufacturing development or maybe attracting a manufacturing development of that nature. And so what we have proposed is an amendment that would allow for the height to be increased, and that would be increased once you hit, if you're going over 65 feet, you can do that, but you have to increase your side and rear setbacks 1 foot for every 2 feet in height over 65 feet. That is the ordinance as we have researched and we looked at various communities within the Unifor. We looked at and throughout the state, and that is it's probably 50-50. Some have a very cutoff, a very definitive cutoff of either 65, 75 feet, and then some have a graduated increase in height. The consideration that I would ask from the Planning and Zoning Commission tonight is possibly to defer action until our next meeting to give us a little bit of time to consider other factors. And we've been researching this up and even until today, but other factors being where there may be obstruction of certain views within the city. And so I think that one of the things that as we've gone through our various planning processes that has come out that is important from an economic development standpoint and attracting folks to Morganton is the views of the mountains. And we need to have a code that both accomplishes what I would like to call common sense, that would allow development to occur, but that would also consider protecting those view sheds as well. So that's, I think that if we would defer this action, go ahead and hold the public hearing tonight and defer any action until maybe to the next meeting, then that would give us time to to do the adequate research that we need to make a more definitive recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Very good. Questions or comments for Philip?
Yeah, the way you're looking at this, I mean, is this an infinite number? I mean, is there gonna be no maximum height whatsoever? It's not gonna be, you know, let's say I want 200 feet. Would that fall under this? Is there a break point here?
As long as you had the land to accommodate that under this code as it stands, you could do that. And you may have, I mean, I don't think you'd go to 200 feet, but I can certainly envision, you know, my father works for a cable manufacturing company, and they have wire drawing towers that can get extremely tall. And so I think that we need to have the ability to have, you know, that would be a good case, but there are other industries that would require maybe it's some sort of mechanized retrieval system or whatever the case may be, and they need to have a higher height for a tower. So, but it does not have a maximum on it. Now, we could put that, if that's a recommendation that we have from the Planning and Zoning Commission, that's certainly a provision that we could put in there.
Yeah, just my gut feel is, it would seem like, since we are allowed to do exceptions later on, if we're gonna do a citywide ordinance, we would have some sort of maximum height.
That's
And
right.
then with the thing for an individual exception. But to put one in and then not know where the surprise is gonna show up.
Our very experienced council member down here has indicated to me in the past that from a fire safety situation, I think we're limited at about 110 feet. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Claude?
Also, if they were going to put a water storage tank in that area for a sprinkler system, it would have to be higher enough to have a 35-pound pressure on the high sprinkler head, and that would probably be roughly 70 feet above the roof level for that.
And we looked at that from the standpoint of how high, you know, in the way that I think that you temper that is that you can make a statement in your code that says a foot for every 2 foot, but that you have to that you also have to be able to that you would be cut off, at which point your fire suppression equipment would no longer be able to function. So if we've got a 100-foot tower, then you may be cut off at 110 foot, unless it were to be you know, a hotel or some other occupied building. You could put a standpipe in and go with that. But for these, which are these industrial type buildings, which are probably mostly for clear ceiling, there's no habitable space, you don't really have stairs to get up in that area, you've got to rely on your equipment. So that is a provision that we could certainly put in there.
Well, there's other sources of getting water up there, but to those areas, like if they'd have a pond or something similar to that for a second water source instead of depending on the city for the water system, for sprinkler system. So they might have to go with something like that, but if that ought to be looked at as far as if they wouldn't be looking for a tower.
Okay. Sure.
Also, just access as far as fire department vehicles and things of that nature. Is that something that would be a factor to keep in consideration?
We already require that. We require a minimum of a 20-foot access way all the way around a building, and those are reviewed by the fire marshal.
Any other comments, questions? Very good. I'm going to open it up to the public for any input. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this proposed amendment? Seeing none, I'll close that, bring it back, and ask for a motion to table this item until our next meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is someone a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll do that in July. Next item is basically other comments for tonight. I would make the one that if you didn't go to Palma last night and attend 550 attendees listening to the downtown.
And wine.
Master plan. I didn't say that. But you missed an opportunity to really get a feel for the future. Any other items that'd like to be brought up to the commission at this time? And if
Don't
you're,
forget, at 6 p.m. tonight, we will
That's right.
meet at the Mountain View.
the Parks and Recreation is presenting their master plan and update, so good deal. If we have nothing else on our agenda to be brought forth, then I will move that we adjourn.